Guys, this is the first video, although it won't make a huge difference what order you choose to watch them in, for specific questions about the research paper itself. So from my home screen here on Canvas, this time I know we've gone over this before. There's lots of ways to get to things on Canvas. I'm choosing to go here to the Junior Research Project module with, you might actually now get the reference here with my little stuffed owl friend who's named Purdy after the Purdue Owl website. That's where a lot of the resources I have posted come from. It's OWL stands for the Online Writing Lab. Sorry, say that 5 times fast. At Purdue University. And they have a variety of resources for all sorts of the steps of your paper. I have a link to their page about outlining, and it is, I think, one of the best resources for formatting and all of that. Although obviously that's nowhere near my biggest concern with the paper, but I think it can be a source of stress for a lot of people. So I have a lot of resources here on the actual assignment page for the paper. I've added a few since in the last few days. So the very first one is just the overall guidelines. Those, though, as I've mentioned, have been changed. I'll update the Google Doc here soon. But as far as the length and the number of sources, those have both changed. So I know that we have fewer resources, and for a lot of us, time is limited. So we're doing the best we can. This one here that says a guide to writing history papers is actually from a different school. This is from UCLA. But since I have y'all using historical topics, I thought this was a really good reference because it talks about specifically writing for a history class. And obviously this is your English class, not your history class, but the type of writing in this paper should be like the type of writing you would do for a history class, just because of the nature of what this what your topics and prompt is. So this has a lot of information. I'm just going to kind of scroll through right now to the parts that are most relevant. Sorry for the feline interruption there. This goes through the whole process. Hopefully you've gotten some of these earlier steps well underway already, but I can't see you well, I know if you haven't turned things in, but anyway. So hopefully you're kind of at the outline stage right now and getting to first draft territory. As I've mentioned before, there's not going to be a rough draft that you have to turn in, especially with the distance learning. That's just really not very practical right now. Normally I would love to have, peer editing in class, and I'll see if we can kind of make some of that happen online, but there's no way I can expect everybody to participate in that right now. But so this has, again, some tips there. One of the biggest, most common tips I find myself giving is not to try to start writing with the introduction. If you've done a really thorough outline and really know what you're going to say in the body of the paper, you might be able to start with it, but I feel like that can be a really overwhelming task. So if you at least have your basic structure in mind, I would probably suggest, if you do feel overwhelmed by the idea of starting with the introduction, just diving into your first body paragraph or whatever body paragraph you feel the most comfortable with. Again, depending on the organization that you've chosen, there might be different reasons for starting it. It might not be like a chronological thing, and you might have had a reason for saving a particular topic for, say, your second or third body paragraph. I like I said, especially for those of you that are going to be typing this paper, which hopefully is still the majority of you. Hopefully you have some kind of a Chromebook or a laptop that you're able to work on. So if you're typing, I say start wherever you feel most comfortable. Start in the middle or in the body of the paper, and then go back and write your introduction later. If you think about when you introduce people to each other, you're probably not going to try and introduce one person to another person until you know a little bit about who those people are first, right? So that's kind of the analogy that I feel like is fitting there. So like I said, this has a lot of specific information about writing about history. Coming back over here, I'm going to show you really quick a very short sample that I have as a Google Doc that's available to you. And again, it'll have a lot of the just generic information as far as how things should look. So I'll have a separate post about formatting and things later, so I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of it now. Like I said, the Purdue OWL website that I have a link on there has all sorts of detailed information about exactly how things should be formatted. But I will do a short video about that. But like I said, here is, like I said, a very basic version of how your paper itself should look. Obviously, your introduction for a paper of this length will probably be more than 3 sentences, which is what I have here. That's kind of more of your star type intro. But a couple things I wanted to address really quick. I do say hooking the reader in here, but don't feel like you need to reach for the types of hooks you might have used for those star type essays. Since this is more of an academic type paper, you don't necessarily need to go to the things that you might use to get the reader's attention like you would in those essays that you wrote last year. So, the asking a question, have you ever thought about, or imagine if, those kinds of things, really not appropriate for this type of paper. And, you're almost certainly not going to have a personal anecdote in again, this sort of paper, unless for some reason you've chosen a historical topic that you have some sort of a personal firsthand connection to. Is probably not going to be a very common thing. So we've talked about the thesis statement a fair bit. And when I say here about like previewing my main points, what I would say there is, if you think about how the paper is going to be later on, you'll probably have a thesis statement that goes something like, if falling back on our very, very common World War II example, if you're talking about the causes of World War II, you might say, while there were many factors that led to the Second World War, the 3 biggest were X, Y, and Z. And then you might have one body paragraph that's dealing with that factor, like the economic depression that Germany went into after the First World War. You might have another paragraph is talking about the conflicts between communism and socialism, or communism and fascism. Sorry. And again, getting into the different things that were happening during that time, and what you, after you did the research, decided were those most important factors. Or if you're talking about the civil rights movement, you might say these were the most important results of the civil rights movement, the most important effects, or the most important laws that went into place, whatever it is. And so then you're going to have your body paragraphs, like I said, probably organized based on, again, that sort of structure that you hopefully introduce in your thesis. So I will talk more about the formatting aspects of this later, but one thing I want to make sure that you're looking at now is that this paragraph here is full of citations. And like I said, I'll get into the nitty gritty of how those should look in my next video. But for the time being, I just want to make it clear that it is very important in those body paragraphs that you are using information from your research. So this is not the time to just throw out everything that you remember hearing Mr. Andrews say, or from a video that you saw on, or show that you saw on the History Channel or something like that. It's fine if there's information that you got from your history class, and it's fine if you're using information that you've, seen in videos, as long as they're credible videos and all that. But since I'm 99% sure that none of you were there during World War II or the Civil Rights Movement, or in New York on 9/11, or any of these different topics that people are working on, any of the information that you're providing, you learned somewhere. So you need to make sure you're telling people where it came from. And remember, there's two big reasons. And the kind of negative sounding one is, of course, that you don't want to find yourself in plagiarism land. That'll be very bad news for your grade. It could have disciplinary consequences. And it's just generally the wrong thing to do. But if we want to look at it from a more positive perspective, again, it's showing the reader that you're not just making this up. This isn't, I know, we sometimes have those stories about on those STAR essays where you do make up information because, again, they don't let you use outside sources. They don't let you bring in books or get on the internet or anything like that. So you are sometimes either guessing or just flat out making up statistics and things like that. But we know in the real world that's not convincing, and people aren't going to believe your information if they don't know where it's coming from and that it's coming from a reputable place. So the positive reason, not just the avoiding trouble reason for citing lots and lots of sources, or citing your 3 sources frequently, as the case may be, is so that your reader knows that this is legit information that can be trusted, and that you're becoming an expert on this, and you're using good information. So I feel like for this first video, that kind of accomplished, well, I don't know if it accomplished it, but I've talked about the things that I thought were most important here, which is, again, just kind of the basic structure of what your introduction does and doesn't need to do, and kind of how your body might be organized. And like I said, it'll probably be something along the lines of, the 3 causes of this, or the 3 effects of this, the most important accomplishments of this person, the most important, if you're doing something about a historical era like the Great Depression, you might do something like causes and effects. You might do something about, the most important, I'm sorry, drawing a total blank here, but most important things that happened during that time period. So I think that's my cue to wrap this one up. Please let me know if you have any questions. And like I said, I'll have a few more videos coming behind this with information about the formatting and all that good stuff.